student code.
I had a question prepared, but I changed it when I heard you talk about the upside-down ratio of our budget. You just said a moment ago that the only way to balance that is to have people pay more tax. I would ask you to rethink that and put the word corporations in the equation. When you have a single out GE that pays no tax or almost no tax relative to the size of GE, we're just, we're never going to get a fair shake, because all of us in this room end up trying to make up for GE and every other corporation that can find a tax loophole or finds tax loopholes because they can afford high-powered accountants that we can't afford to do it, and they can afford to put lobbyists in Washington and change the laws to suit them. So if I can make only one point to you, and as you are our representative to take back to Washington, is to try to get a consensus together to take the teeth out of corporations and get them to pony up tax money that they have been allowed to dodge for years.
Thank you very much for the question and the comment. Let me tell you where I come from on that, because I'm going to agree and disagree. First, let's acknowledge that though it's true that for a number of years GE did not pay corporate taxes to the federal government, so they've been beaten up for that, as a lot of other companies have been beaten up. Well, they played by the rules. I mean, they just filled out the tax forms as they were legally allowed, and by their size, and yes, by the ingenuity of some of their accountants and tax officers, they were able to find offsets that didn't require them to pay corporate income taxes. But we do the same things ourselves. I mean, none of us would forego a tax benefit and voluntarily pay more to the federal government, with the exception of Mitt Romney and his tax returns for 2012. But none of us would. So let me come back to where I agree with you, which is that you're right. That it's not right that they weren't paying any taxes, and it's also even more wrong that there are small and medium-sized businesses and corporations out there that are paying their fair share, that are coming close to paying 30+% of their income to the federal government, because they don't have those offsets and they don't have to arm you accounts. And so what you have is big companies that are not paying legally, and you have a lot of small and medium-sized companies, the ones, frankly, that I think we would rather remove the burden from paying those taxes to allow them to grow paying more than their fair share. So,
and you mentioned the word 2 or 3 times. Legally, yes, they're finding legal
right.
ways
Change the laws. Change the laws. So that's where I finished. So change the laws. The United States has the highest corporate tax rate in the world, and in a lot of ways that makes us non-competitive. We have a very, very high corporate tax rate. Even though most big corporations don't pay anywhere close to that number, it's just a big red light to the rest of the world that we are going to require you, if you incorporate here, to pay more than you do anywhere else. And so it makes us non-competitive. So what a lot of us argue is that you should bring that rate down from where it is today, but then get rid of all of that mess of exclusions and deductions and credits so that every corporation is paying the same number. Now that number could be substantially lower. It could be a number that's in the 20s, but everybody would pay it. And ultimately then, companies would make decisions about how they invest money based on how they get new customers and grow, rather than based on how they get around paying taxes. And that's what I argue for. I argue for a corporate tax rate, and I do need to get to other questions. So I argue for a corporate tax rate that is lower than what we have today, but that is much simpler so that everybody is paying the same rate.
Just a quick follow-up, then I got
net result would be,
You gotta go.
we wouldn't be, I don't want to take up any more time. The net result would be, we as people would not feel so outclassed, so outdone. The playing field's got to be level.
I understand, I understand, and I'll make the same argument maybe later today in response to another question about personal income tax. We should have a simpler personal income tax code as well.
My